evening, I'm Katerina Georgieva. Thanks for joining us. Here's what's making news right now.
They may be shooting for the moon on this one, and that even if successful, they would be unlikely to get everything they're asking for.
I just think it's so obvious, and it's not a discussion that I just brought up recently. It's something we've been talking about for years.
This show's been in planning for quite a while. It was originally meant to be able to accommodate both sides of the border, being on the Detroit River.
We begin tonight with a battle brewing between the City of Windsor and some of its former employees. Firefighters, early childhood educators, and a personal support worker are some of the former staff launching a lawsuit over losing their jobs because of the city's COVID-19 vaccine mandate. CBC's Jennifer LaGrassa has been looking into this and joins me now live in studio. Jen, what have you learned about the suit so far?
Well, the group behind this says the city's mandatory COVID-19 vaccination policy violated their constitutional rights and that it goes against their Charter of Rights and Freedoms. They say that the city is acting outside of its authority, and because of this, they want to see the policy removed and receive money for having lost their jobs. The suit involves 20 workers who lost their jobs because they either didn't show proof of vaccination or they didn't get vaccinated. They were first placed on unpaid leave for a few months and then fired at the start of this year. And that policy was implemented by the city in September of last year, and it remains in effect today. In January, the city said 104 people had been fired for not providing proof of their first vaccine dose.
And Jen, how is the city responding?
Well, in an email today, the city told me that it doesn't comment on legal issues that are in progress, but any action against the city will be reviewed and any steps taken would be put in the best of residents' interests first.
Aside from the argument around constitutional rights, what else are you hearing about why these workers are acting against the city?
The 20 people behind this lawsuit say that they were significantly impacted by losing their jobs, and so were their families. Some of them say they have lost their homes or their marriages, and that this whole situation has caused anxiety and depression.
Jen, we saw vaccine mandates set in across the province last year. What are other health authorities making of this particular case?
The acting medical officer of health here in Windsor says people who work in public service have a certain level of responsibility to the public, so they should be up to date with their vaccines.
Some people's jobs in public service are so important that we can't have individuals or a group of them get sick. And in that particular case, the public policy has to weigh the rights of the individual or the preferences of the individual versus the collective benefit of keeping a vital service running.
Meanwhile, the Ministry of Health told me in an emailed statement, proof of vaccine was always meant to be a temporary measure. Organizations can make their own policies, but they must fall within human rights laws.
What do we know so far about how this lawsuit could play out?
Well, you'll remember that we saw a similar situation play out with Canadian Stellantis workers. The union representing staff wanted its vaccine mandate overturned as more than 300 workers had been suspended without pay. That went to arbitration and the policy was struck down in June. Unifor told me that since then, all of those workers have been hired back. But I also spoke with a labor and employment law expert in Toronto who doesn't think the group fighting the city will win their case.
Having 20 employees involved means that they've got far more avenues to argue, and that increases their chances of success because the individual particularities of each employee can be used in order to challenge the law under the Charter. But on the other hand, it is very difficult, and it's especially difficult looking at the context of the pandemic to argue that vaccine mandates are a breach of the Charter when you think about how many lives have been affected by the pandemic and that these policies are to prevent further lives being lost.
As for next steps in this case, the City of Windsor has 20 days to file a statement of defense. This matter could then go before a court.
Thanks for this, Jen. CBC's Jennifer LaGrassa live in studio tonight. Two Windsorites accused of leading and organizing the Ambassador Bridge blockade made their first court appearance today. Both Nicole DeCredico and William Laframboise are charged with mischief, and Windsor police say they organized the blockade. Police also say they were both drivers of vehicles that blocked traffic at Huron Church and Tecumseh Road. The bridge was blocked by truck drivers and others protesting against mask mandates and vaccine mandates as well. It lasted a week before being cleared by police officers from across Canada. Today, De Credico declined to comment. Laframboise told CBC he did not lead or organize the blockade in Windsor, although he admits he was there for 2 days. The day it started, he says he was protesting in Ottawa. Since he's been charged, Laframboise says his property has been damaged and he's received death threats. Laframboise told the court he will be defending himself. He asked the court for a pre-trial date as soon as possible, even next week, and his next appearance is October 14th.
I was at the shop here. I caught out of my peripheral. The car just went zooming by and ended up hitting into the shop here.
You're looking at a collision on University Avenue earlier today. 2 vehicles were involved, one crashing into a building. People rushed to help remove that driver from the vehicle just as emergency crews showed up. One person was taken to hospital. We are waiting for an update on her condition and no word yet on the second vehicle. Windsor's acting police chief says there needs to be more resources to address mental health in the city. The comments come after a man waving a machete was shot and killed by police downtown. Acting Police Chief Jason Belair joins me now. Thank you so much for doing this. So just to start, how often are police responding to situations where a person is in mental distress?
Frequently. I don't have a number for you, but it happens multiple times every 24-hour cycle that we have our shifts. It's a very, very common, frequent call for service.
And how are police equipped to deal with these kinds of calls?
Officers receive from the very beginning when they come into Windsor Police. They receive training, de-escalation training. They receive training to do their best to deal with people who are experiencing mental health crisis, and to work to try and transition that person into some other service or to the hospital, or to provide a referral of some sort. But it's training that starts at the beginning and continues throughout the officers' careers as they work.
So you say this happens very frequently, and you've also said that you're frustrated by how often officers are faced with these kinds of situations. Can you elaborate on that?
Well, it's really not much different than what I've said before. It's that we will not stop responding. I don't want people to get the wrong message. We are still going to continue to respond and do our job and attend when people call 911. I think what we're looking for is to stop having a police response to things that aren't a police response, or to provide resources or assets to facilitate treatment for people, so that the police aren't dealing with these people after they've been left in a system that has so many gaps and disconnects between services. It's I just think it's so obvious, and it's not a discussion that I just brought up recently. It's something we've been talking about for years. I mean, it's catching traction now because, once again, we have a tragic situation that has created a conversation. But quite frankly, this is something at Windsor Police anyway that we've been talking about for quite some time.
So specifically, what needs to happen in order for that to change?
Well, I think, people who are subject matter experts in mental health need to do more. They need to do more, not just in what they do every day, but they need to create the infrastructure to deal with these situations. The police will still attend and do these things, but we need a destination to bring people. We need a destination that's not the emergency room of our local hospitals. We need a destination that specifically treats people, especially those people that fall in that middle range, that they're not so severely in crisis that they're apprehended on the Mental Health Act, or on the opposite side, they're not so mildly afflicted that they can easily work with family, friends, and referral services to get those support services. It's really that big band in the middle of individuals that we deal with, and that the public deals with, and everybody deals with, and paramedics deal with, and hospitals deal with on a daily basis. There needs to be a place to bring these people, or places or services that are open and able to accept these folks to provide them the services they need.
And what kinds of conversations are you having with community partners so that something like that could be set up, a location where you can take people, more supports available? What are you doing to address that?
Well, for years we've been asking for it, and we just simply don't have that right now. And that's not something that's in our purview to apply for funding. That's not, we're not going to have a Windsor Police drop-off center for people struggling with mental health challenges. It should be, some of these other agencies that we have that deal with those things, and they should be, creating the infrastructure that we need as a community to address those things.
Thanks for this. Appreciate your time today.
All right, take care. Thank you.
The medical officer of health says access to mental health services is at a crisis level in Windsor, Essex. He says waiting lists are completely unacceptable and that the problem has been ignored for too long.
I do think that we clearly have a crisis in access. Access is one part of providing a meaningful and functional health system. The other two parts, or the other two key components, are patient satisfaction and quality of care. And it's something that warrants attention by the public overall.
A closer look now at the province's new long-term care legislation. We're learning hospital patients refusing to go to a long-term care home could face high fees for remaining in their room. This comes as the government plans to bypass public hearings in order to quickly pass the bill. Talia Ricci has a reaction tonight.
Robin Christie is watching Bill 7 closely, and she's worried about what it could mean for her 82-year-old father.
My main concern, obviously, is his disruption, keeping him safe.
The legislation would allow the hospital to find a patient a spot in a long-term care home that isn't on their preferred list.
Unless I know where he's going and, have visited the location, have checked out the complaints process, etc., I'm not comfortable with that.
Hospital beds weren't made for long-term care patients. And what's happening is clogging up the emergency departments, delaying surgeries. These problems are decades in the making.
The province has said that the legislation doesn't allow patients to be physically forced to move to a long-term care home. But yesterday, the Minister of Long-Term Care said people should absolutely be charged a fee in cases where patients refuse a transfer.
Nobody's going to be arrested. Nobody's going to be carted off against their will. If somebody refuses to move into a home, if they refuse to move into their home of preferred choice, then yes, should a hospital charge them? Absolutely, because we need those spaces for patients who need acute care.
A hospital's uninsured daily rates can be $1,500 a day or more.
And the homes that they're obviously going to be negotiating with tend to be the homes that people don't want to go to for very good reason.
Concerns are also being raised about how far patients could be sent from their families. Today, the Liberals said in some areas it could be hundreds of kilometers. CBC News asked the Ministry of Health to confirm this, but we didn't receive a response.
Often, the shortages of staff in long-term care are augmented by family members, coming in at meal times, providing care in a multitude of ways.
The bill is currently in its second reading. No committee meetings have been scheduled to gather public input on it.
We're calling on Doug Ford to withdraw Bill 7.
Dr. Sinha reflects on difficult conversations he's already having with patients.
I had a patient yesterday who said, if I'm being told I have to move to a home that I don't want to be a part of, I'd rather just die.
Talia Ricci, CBC News, Toronto.
That there is the grand finale of a surprise fireworks show last night. The display lasted 17 minutes right on the river between Windsor and Detroit. No advance notice, though, and a lot of questions about who this was for and how it was pulled off. We've got your answer. It was a private show for the Insulators Union Convention in Detroit. The display, pieced together by Michigan-based Ace Pyro, who had all the proper permits for the event, and they've done big 4th of July shows that you may have seen at the border as well. Here's why this show was a surprise.
There's reasons why we don't widely advertise it, because we don't want to have a really large crowd down there, because then there's, it complicates, crowd control measures and security and everything else that's necessary. And so we, a private event like this usually is not advertised, although obviously people that love fireworks would love to know about it. But, once you start telling a few, pretty soon everybody knows. And then that in itself can be a real challenge.
Tomorrow, Wheatley will mark 1 year since that massive explosion destroyed part of the community. And we will have extensive coverage on CBC Windsor, led by CBC's Jacob Barker.
It's been 1 year since an explosion rocked the downtown core here in Wheatley, and residents and businesses are still left wondering what the plan is moving forward and how the downtown will survive.
We want to be with our neighbors, we want to be with our friends, and we just, this was home.
There is always going to be a thought in the back of your mind as to whether it's safe to go back or not.
Live look outside, there are chance of showers tonight, looking like it while looking at the clouds. Dolly Asher will be here after the break. A cold six-pack might be the perfect treat to split between pals on a summer afternoon, but those pesky plastic holders can be a real harm for animals. Canada's craft beer businesses sized up the problem and are brewing up a potential solution.
The previous can carrier that we were using was this, very common in the craft beer industry, hard plastic HDPE material of the PackTech. And we have now since moved to this carrier. The Can Color Classic is just a paperboard material which is recyclable. We started with a kind of soft market trial. This has stood up very well. So the can carriers themselves come in this sheet of 6. The sheet is put into the bright green guide there. It is then put over top of the flat of cans, and it is just a simple press with an operator, and it's applied, creating this kind of angle which holds the can in place. There's actually 1,800 sheets in this box, whereas a box of 700 of these is about 3 times the size. It takes many, many decades for plastic to degrade in a landfill, whereas it's still just paperboard. It should hopefully decompose and return to the earth a lot sooner than a piece of plastic. But please recycle it. We look around the world and we see Garbage Island in the Pacific Ocean, landfills are overflowing, and if everyone just does a small amount, it makes a big impact.
And now we bring in Dahlia Ashry, because watching that, all I can think about is, can I go sit on a patio soon? Can I have a drink? I think it's, really inspiring.
Yes, and it links in just well with the environment. And like you said, Katerina, makes us think about, when can I enjoy a cold one? And the answer to that is this weekend. Not so much tonight and not so much tomorrow, because there's a risk of thunderstorms and damp conditions. The humidity is still sticking around, though, so you can always enjoy a cold one at home. The normal high this time of year is 25 degrees, sitting well above that at 28 degrees. Normal low 15, sitting at 17 in Windsor. Now, the current temperature in Windsor, 26 degrees. Sarnia at 26, cool spot in the region, Kitchener at 20. But then you factor in the humidity that we've been talking about over the past few days and for the days to come, and it cranks up that heat. Windsor, 33 degrees, even bringing up Kitchener to 26 degrees, even though it was at 20. So really ramping up the heat there. Now, we're seeing that precipitation in most areas, especially across the GTA. Windsor also saw a little bit of rain coverage earlier today. There was a severe thunderstorm watch across parts of the GTA and a thunderstorm warning that was in effect in areas like Caledon and Brampton, more so towards the east. Now, of course, that rain is continuing, and it will continue over Thursday, tonight, and tomorrow. As we take a look at it on your way to work, it starts to clear up. Scattered showers throughout the day. Around 5 p.m. it starts to clear up, and we head into Saturday and Sunday. Look at that beautiful clear sky, sunny conditions. A great time to enjoy those cold ones that we were talking about. Now, what to look forward to this evening? The temperature will drop in Windsor, 19 degrees, cloudy periods, and then you have Sarnia, 18 degrees, and a risk of a thunderstorm. And then what to expect over the next few days. So we're talking about those dry conditions. We've had wet conditions over the past few days, and then today and tomorrow there's a risk of a thunderstorm, 40% chance of scattered showers. Saturday, Sunday, a great time to take advantage of the dry weather and head outdoors and enjoy it, even though the humidity is cranking up, bringing up the heat up to 34 degrees on Sunday. Monday and Tuesday on your commute to work, you're going to hit that wet conditions again, so make sure you bring an umbrella. So swap those sunglasses, Katerina, for your umbrellas for Monday and Tuesday, but pop on those sunglasses for the weekend.
And I'm already sweating looking at that. Feels like 39. My goodness.
You have time to think of the drink that you're going to get, Katerina.
There you go. Exactly.
Stay hydrated.
Thanks for that,
Okay,
Dahlia.
see you,
Appreciate
Katerina.
it.
What's going on? Nav Nanwa here, the host of CBC's Windsor Morning, and we are officially 2 months away from the municipal election, and CBC Windsor wants to hear from you. Myself and members of our team will be at the Walkerville Night Market this Friday from 6 to 8 p.m., and we want to know what election issues matter to you the most, and while you tell us, we might even give you some free swag. So come by, pay us a visit at the Walkerville Night Market here on Argyle Road. We'll be here from 6 to 8 p.m., and we'll see you there.
Welcome back. Do you have arguments about best before dates on food? I know that I sometimes do. Some experts say consumers are taking them too literally, saying people are treating them like expiry dates. CBC's Cameron McIntosh on a push for change.
These are $3.65.
Farm Fresh in downtown Winnipeg. It's not just the lure of straight to the plate. For many here, it's also about stretching budgets.
Lots of times I'll have a list in my mind or menus in my mind, and I'll come to the market and I'm like, oh, plan B. You have to look for the bargains.
Vendors are keenly aware of it.
While many are trying to stretch their food buying dollars a little further, others are looking at the other end, what's being thrown out.
Relative to the United States and the United Kingdom, Canadians waste more food, about 79 kilograms per person per year. That's about 174 pounds. Some in waste management see best before dating as part of the problem. Food thrown out too soon.
Whether it be at the consumer level, so what the consumer has bought and is in their cupboard, or just throughout the chain, such as, for example, a retailer not being prepared to take a product from a distributor because there's insufficient gap between when they're buying it and when it says best before.
Several British retailers say they're scrapping best before dates on some products that may decline in quality but are still fit to eat.
People are obsessed. People are hooked. People are addicted to best before dates.
Sylvain Charlebois is an expert in food supply management. He says Canadians are conditioned to follow the label. Simple rule, he says, abide by expiry dates. Best before dates could be viewed more like guidelines.
If the product has a best before date and it's past that date, doesn't mean it's bad.
Back at the farmer's market, no labels here. The notion of keeping food around longer depends on who you ask.
As long as it doesn't smell bad or whatever, I'm okay.
I don't really look at the due-by dates, except sometimes with milk or something.
Never a problem in my house. I think it all usually gets pretty consumed up pretty quickly.
Cameron McIntosh, CBC News, Winnipeg.
And a pair of high-flying siblings, the younger brother has landed a pair of new world records. 17-year-old Mac Rutherford touched down at an airport in Bulgaria yesterday. He became the youngest person to circumnavigate the world solo and the youngest person to do so in a micro-light aircraft. The flight took 5 months and covered 52 countries on 5 continents. The feat beats out his older sister, Zara Rutherford. Back in January when she was 19, Zara finished a flight that made her the youngest female pilot to fly solo around the world and the first person to complete a circumnavigation in a micro-light aircraft. It's really cool for me to see that footage. That was in Sofia, Bulgaria, the city of my birth. And that is it for CBC Windsor News. For news anytime, go to our website, cbc.ca/Windsor. You can also find us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Thanks for watching. Have a good night.